Today on BRStv Tank Trials ULM edition, it's episode 13 and we're talking ULM flow solutions, and then giving away a brand new pair of Ecotech MP10s at the end. I'm Ryan, your host of BRStv Tank Trials ULM edition. Tank Trials is all about taking everything the BRS team and reefing community knows about a very specific approach to reefing, implementing that knowledge, tracking the progress, and then exploring the results. This is episode 13 of ULM in development of an ultra-low maintenance system. The goal is a show caliber, stable reef tank that requires as little maintenance as possible, potentially performing only a few minutes of maintenance a month. Today is all about installing a set it and forget it flow solution. Well, at first glance, it might not seem like there's a lot to selecting an ultra-low maintenance flow solution. Pumps in general and powerheads are absolutely one of the items in the tank that rapidly deteriorate performance the longer they're in the tank, and often one of the biggest pains to clean. Often requires rerouting cords, soaking the components for hours in vinegar, or something like Toons' citric acid, which is an undesirable task. So what exactly is a low maintenance flow solution? Well, to begin with, I'd like an easy method of knowing when it is time to maintain the pumps. Obviously, we'd also like to go as long as possible between maintenance, and when it does need maintenance, it should be easy and quick. The flow solution should also keep the tank clean, particularly in bare bottom tanks like these, which can collect a lot of detritus. And lastly, related to last week's peace of mind concept, there should be some type of solution that covers power outages. I'm going to start with a daily goal of simply keeping the tank clean and looking nice. Outside of proper flow for the corals, one of the main other roles of flow in the tank is actually to keep it clean and reduce overall general maintenance. I'm talking about proper flow, keeping the rock and sand free of undesirable elements like cyano, keeping detritus suspended so it can be removed by filtration in the sump rather than settle out in the tank, in the case of bare bottoms like those in our ULMs. Since the goal generally requires a significant amount of flow and the corals generally don't like getting blasted at 100% all day long, and the sand will often get blown all over with sustained flow like that, so the best solution for keeping the tank clean is often periodic bursts of increased flow, either by turning on additional pumps with a wave maker or a more advanced varied flow pattern that DC controllable pumps are capable of. Well, historically, I think the hobby's attempted to create what was referred to as random or varied flow patterns, which are often fairly short bursts, 15 seconds, 30 seconds, or even 1 minute bursts. I think reefers are beginning to gravitate to something a bit different with more sustained currents, and then followed with shifting turbulent flow. It's just impossible for an actual current or sustained flow pattern to be developed in the tank with 15-second bursts, so on-off cycles of many minutes can produce more desirable results for coral health, reducing detritus, and maintaining a cleaner reef tank. One of the more successful reefers I know here in Minneapolis achieves these current sustained flow patterns with standard AC-driven pumps by turning on the right side for 30 minutes, then the left side for 30 minutes, and then both for 30 minutes, creating sustained alternating currents followed by strong chaotic flow, which repeats itself many times a day. With the use of DC pumps and the Gyre, which is capable of not just turning on and off, but also decreasing or increasing flow rates, we're able to take this a step further by shifting the turbulence intersection point throughout the tank as well. With AC pumps, the main point of turbulence will always be where the flow intersects, which is often in the center of the tank. With DC pumps, we can shift the point of turbulence. For instance, if the left pump's on 80% and the right's on 20%, the point of turbulence will be on the far right side of the tank. So what we did with the 160 was 45 minutes with the right gyre at 100% and left at 0, which is 45 minutes of sustained current. Then 45 minutes where the right pump slowly ramps down to 0, while the left pump slowly ramps up to 100%, which slowly shifts the point of turbulence across the entire tank over 45 minutes. Then 45 minutes of strong left gyre current, followed by 45 minutes of shifting turbulence going back the other way. To do this, we had to use optional ice cap module and custom programming using our Apex controller. We threw that code down in the description. Using a controller with 0 to 10 volt outputs, you could do something very similar with Toons controllable DC pumps, of course Neptune's Wave, and Ecotech's Vortec pumps using the Apex WXM module. However, Vortec has a variety of intelligent flow patterns out of the box. One of the most similar to this is the Tidal Swell program, which can actually even incorporate backflow into the program as well. The nutrient transport mode might also be appealing to those that are looking for lower general flow but do want to periodically flush detritus from the tank. This might be particularly effective on low to medium flow bare bottom tanks. In any case, selecting the right flow solution for your tank can certainly reduce all types of maintenance needs on the tank. So looking more directly at the actual maintenance of the pumps, starting with identifying when is it time to maintain the pumps. We all spend a lot of money on our pumps to get the desired flow rates, but many of them will slow down to half speed or even less over time if they're not maintained properly. I think some of the most obvious ways to notice is the sand stops turning over or shifting around, specific large polyp or soft corals have reduced movement, or signs of proper current. And more obvious, the pumps often get completely covered in coralline algae and biofilm. A pump that visually looks like it needs maintenance probably does. However, that's just a perception and not a measurement of actual flow. I think most of us would prefer an actual method of measurement so we can change it when the performance falls below a predetermined level like 10, 20, or even 50% reduction in flow. At first glance, that may seem hard to do, but indirectly, I think there's a pretty easy solution using power monitoring on some of the more advanced controllers. For example, on the BRS-160, when the gyres get dirty, there's a very noticeable drop in flow, which I can identify visually in all the ways that we discussed, but there's also a drop in power consumption as the pump head spins slower. Once we disassemble and clean them, the power and the flow consumption rises back up to normal, meaning that we can actually set up a pump maintenance alarm if the power draw ever falls below, say, 70% of normal output, letting us know it's time to perform general maintenance. I haven't personally tried this on other pumps, but I imagine it would work the same on a lot of them. It certainly would be interesting to hear from the YouTube and Reef to Reef community what the power draw is before and after maintenance cleaning for various pumps. If you don't have or plan on using an advanced controller, I'm pretty sure you can get the same results by just putting one of your power heads on something like a $25 kilowatt, which measures power draw and is a handy device to have around the house regardless. You can also pick up a proper 10 outlet power strip and monitor all of your power heads together with kilowatts PS10. In terms of maintenance frequency, of all the power head options out there, I have to say that I haven't really encountered any that seem to require dramatically different maintenance schedules, and most would benefit from quarterly cleaning. The one note I will say is the more moving parts and components it has, the more components are available to build up with gunk or coralline. In that spirit, I would say the max spec gyre seems to require a bit more frequent cleaning, but even with that, it's still my favorite solution that we've ever put on the 160. In this case, one gyre replaced two smaller power heads, so it might be an even trade-off. If increasing the length of time between maintenance is really your goal, I think the most realistic option is to use a controllable pump with a flow range that allows you to increase flow over time to compensate for the buildup of gunk. Keeping the pumps clean is obviously better for the pump, but if we're being honest with ourselves, I think a lot of reefers would prefer to just turn the pump up than spend a ton of time installing them and cleaning them, rerouting the cords all over again. It's not always realistic, but you can also reduce the maintenance frequency by protecting it from the elements which can reduce performance, such as locating the pumps out of direct light to reduce coralline, away from areas where calcium and alkalinity are dosed, and by maintaining common calcium and alkalinity levels rather than shooting for extremes. One thing to note is closed loop designs that rely on one larger pump and a network of pipe to produce proper flow likely require less frequent maintenance, but that obviously depends on the quality of the pump. It also requires that the design and install are done properly so it meets that goal, which is often not the case. I would also note that when the pump or install does need maintenance, it's often significantly more difficult. However, the effort and complexity may be worth it for that clean, cordless closed loop. It's one of the few options that can produce zero visible cords in the tank, and the only option which has zero pump heads in the tank. When it comes to the ease of maintaining the actual pumps, most of what you're doing is just soaking the pumps in vinegar or something like citric acid and some limited scrubbing. So it's mostly about how easy it is to remove the pumps and how much disassembly that you need to do. I would certainly route the cords so the pumps are fairly easy to remove and replace when the time comes. Pumps like the Tunes and Hydors and Neptune's Wave have limited components to clean and not a ton of disassembly, and we've already mentioned there are more components to the gyre, and because of that, just a few minutes more of cleaning. There is one serious standout here, and that's the Ecotech Vortec. That's because they're magnetically coupled and only the head is in the tank. That means the only piece that needs to come out is the wet side. That means the motor and cords can stay right where they are and eliminates almost all of the most unpleasant components of cleaning your pumps. Just reach into the tank, pull out the head pump for cleaning, and everything else stays put. Many reefers will actually pick up a pair of extra wet sides, so pump maintenance takes all of 10 seconds. Pull out the dirty one and replace with a clean one. Then just soak the dirty ones for next time. This is obviously a pretty attractive solution. Another element related to pump maintenance is how many pumps do you need to maintain to achieve your flow goals. This is personally where I think the gyres excel, because a single pump is capable of creating a strong, sustained current in the tank, and because most of the focused and power component of the flow is often shooting across the top of the tank to create the currents, the corals don't have to get directly blasted. With a solution like that, we're able to get away with just 2 power heads on a 6-foot tank with the 160. Similar to that, because they're so powerful, many reefers can get away with a single Vortex or Neptune wave on each side of the tank. In any case, I think it's fairly obvious that fewer pumps means less maintenance, so it might be wise to select options that can get the job done with as few actual pumps in the tank as possible, something that's also aesthetically pleasing as well. And last but not least, I'm going to loan a concept from last week's controller video, which is peace of mind. And for a ULM where you might not be around all the time, having a power outage solution for the power heads is a pretty critical component. The tank can go a pretty long time without heat, light, filtration, and basically every other component of the tank's life support as long as there's flow. The water's turning over and there's proper gas exchange. So having an automatic solution that turns the pumps on in the event of a power outage is pretty darn valuable. Most power outages are measured in hours and not days, so the solution doesn't have to be capable of running them forever. With AC pumps, this almost always is done with common computer battery backups. I would note that most of the common sizes will only last a few hours because the internal DC to AC inverter actually consumes more power than the power heads themselves. With DC pumps, a pump can run straight off DC battery power, so the battery will last much longer, often days rather than hours, and you don't need every last pump backed up, just 1 or 2 to keep the water moving and oxygen levels high. Most of the DC power heads have a solution for this. The Vortex have their easy-to-mount battery backup solution capable of running a single pump for up to 2.5 days or 2 pumps for 30 hours straight. You can also add additional units to double the runtime. The Gyre has a small compact version, and the Tunes has a unique approach called the safety connector, which allows you to select your own battery option. Since batteries are commodity items, this is probably one of the cheapest and most flexible options out there if you want very long run times with large batteries. All in all, I think having a battery backup solution is an absolute requirement for me on a ULM tank. Looking at some of the reefing community's input, I think many of the reefers generally agree with the vantage points that we've touched on here as well. AquaArt on Reef to Reef shared, although there are better flow solutions in the Ecotech Vortex pumps, I think it would be hard to argue that they're not one of the lowest maintenance water flow solutions available. Every power head needs to be cleaned, but it's the only one in the market that can be cleaned, decalcified, and reinstalled without ever needing to touch the motor or tackle the wiring. It's certainly hard to get around that fact. It is what I would refer to as exponentially easier to maintain than other options, simply because you don't have to unplug everything to do it. Over on YouTube, Engineering Aquarium shared, for me, ULM flow is flow that comes from high quality, low need for cleaning sources. It also allows for control like the MaxSpec Gyre, where you can branch off and set as many data points for exactly what you need. Quiet pumps like the Ecotechs also come to mind. Both of those come with customer support, and the Gyre at least has spare parts in the box for easy cleaning and necessary replacements. That's on point, and something that I missed. The spare parts that come with the Gyre do allow you to clean many parts other than the motor head and swap them out without taking the pump and cords off the tank. So moving on to the selections for the 3 ULM tanks, if you haven't caught on already, the needs of a softy and polyp tank are not tremendously different than an LPS tank. So I'm going to select the same option for both, and if you guessed it, we're going to go with a pair of Vortex MP10s, you'd be right. I think this choice is incredibly obvious for the ULM tanks based on a handful of pretty undeniable factors. The ease of actually maintaining them simply by swapping out the clean wet side as needed and letting the dirty head soak overnight for next time. This is just a 1-minute job and fits our ultra-low maintenance desires for the tanks best. The pump's programming and modes fit our periodic strong current desires for keeping the detritus suspended long enough that the filtration can remove it. We'll likely explore using the tidal swell or nutrient export modes to find out what best suits our needs. In relation to that and our bare bottom tanks, the design also allows us to place the pumps at the bottom of the tank to keep the black ABS bare bottom clean and presentable. Even when it's covered in coralline algae, this will keep the detritus off a vast majority of the bottom of the tank. We took a quick before and after shot so you can see what a difference it makes to have real flow on the bottom of a bare bottom tank. You might notice that this approach of placing the pumps on the back makes them nearly invisible, and there isn't a single visible cord in or outside the tank. This is about the cleanest look possible, and between the dual returns and the MP10s, this will provide a really solid flow solution for all the types of corals that we plan on putting in either of these tanks. Lastly, the MP10s also have a super easy to implement and mount battery backup solution, which gives me that peace of mind that I need with a ULM where I'm not in my office over the weekend or holidays. Moving on to the SPS tank, the solution is nearly identical with the two MP10s mounted on the back, except we also put a pair of MP10s on the sides of the tanks to produce that high rate of flow that SPS seems to thrive in. In all honesty, I wish I could put these additional pumps on the back as well for that zero chord look, but the external overflow box and plumbing we use prevents us from doing that. In any case, this is going to provide likely the best flow solution that we've implemented on any tank, and I'm excited to see how it pans out. Next week, I think, is going to be the most exciting or at least interesting topic that we've done to date, ultra-low maintenance calcium and alkalinity solutions. I've been talking to a variety of reefers about this episode for months, and I think you'll be pretty interested to see what we came up with. I know at least two of the options will come as a surprise to most reefers. So in the meantime, share your ideas of what calcium and alkalinity maintenance looks like, what the biggest challenges are, short and long term, and what the best solutions are for a softy and polyp tank, which often has very little consumption, an LPS tank, which can be low to mid consumption, and a jam-packed SPS tank, which can consume tons of calcium, even more so in smaller tanks like this one, where the ratio of corals to water is generally higher and chemistry changes are faster. I know a lot of people have thoughts on this one, so I'm super excited to hear what they are for sure. Don't forget, we're giving away two of these awesome MP10s this week, so click that link on the left to sign up, or head on over to the site, hit specials and deals and free stuff to sign up. If you like what we're doing here and want to see more, hit that subscribe button because we release new reefing videos all week long. See you next week with another episode of BRStv Tank Trials ULM Edition.